Hi everyone, welcome to this video. My name is Phil and I'm a senior lecturer in astrophysics at the University of Lincoln. And I want to kind of carry on the theme of doing videos on galaxies. Now, one of my previous videos looked at radio loud galaxies and how we might classify those. Well, there's a different class of active galaxies which are kind of like radio loud galaxies. This time around they're radio quiet. They have a different name. They're called Seyfert Galaxies. Well, some of them actually are. There's very different types. And what I'm going to do is just recap galaxies in case you haven't come across any of the previous videos, recap kind of differences between your radio loud, radio quiet, and then move on towards the Seyfert galaxies and then the different types of those galaxies as well, and why they're radio quiet, why they're different to the more powerful active galaxies like quasars, blazars, that sort of thing as well. So just to kind of recap galaxies, if this is the first time you've come across galaxies or some of my videos, I'm just going to recap what they are. Now these are massive systems and they're comprised of stars, gas, dust, dark matter, and they're gravitationally bound. Now some of them are rotating a bit like this one here, like spiral galaxies. Others are more spherical and the movement of the material inside the stars is a bit more random. And depending on the type of galaxy, the size of the galaxy, its age, they will have different ratios or amounts of stars, gas, dust, and all that. Actually, some galaxies have very little gas, some have old stars, some have young stars. But anyway, they're massive systems that can vary a lot in size and composition. So, I mean, most of these actually here are disk-like galaxies, but they do come in a variety of shapes, sizes, colours even, different types of stars that can reside in them. So they can be quite small galaxies, dwarf galaxies, they can be enormous giant elliptical galaxies. So they do come in quite a range. They're not just, like the Milky Way, where a barred spiral galaxy. There's lots of different sorts of galaxies out there. Now, just to kind of get a recap on the classification system, so you'll see this kind of tuning fork diagram, and on the right hand side you have your spiral galaxies. Now along the top kind of fork there we have our normal spirals. That's where they've got like a more spherical central bulge. Then on the bottom one you have your barred spirals like the Milky Way. They have a bar in the centre, spiral arms, they're disc-like, so they're kind of rotating in a common direction. Most of the disc is anyway. And as you go from right to left on that diagram, they get older, they evolve, so it's actually back to front how you might think it might be. They don't necessarily lose their gas, but their gas content reduces because it is formed into stars. The stars get older, so the galaxies get redder. The spiral arms get more tightly wound. Now sometimes there is a third kind of branch there in between the two, which is intermediate spiral galaxies. And they have kind of not a perfectly spherical centre and not a obvious bar. They're kind of in between, so it's kind of a little bit of an asymmetric centre there. And then if we go to the other main type, there are elliptical galaxies. These don't have spiral arms. They don't kind of have a common rotation. They do have some rotation, but the stars are moving more random inside. And yeah, they're not disc-like, they're more spherical, and they're classified basically by their shape. So if they're perfectly spherical, it'll be an E0. And if they're more cigar-shaped, it's E7. Now I did a separate video looking at the more elliptical ones, and these actually might not be elliptical galaxies, but they could be more edge-on lenticulars. Now that's a whole separate video because they transition between the two types. And it's very difficult to distinguish because they can look like ellipticals. But anyway, they're classified by their shape. These have older stars as well, so they will appear slightly redder or more redder than your spirals. Now, if we then go to kind of like another subcategory of galaxies, so all of those sorts of galaxies on that diagram potentially could be what we would classify as AGN, so they have a active galactic nuclei. And this is the supermassive black hole in the centre, which most galaxies have. We assume that most galaxies have these massive black holes in their centre. Now, when those black holes are active, so you've got material falling onto them, we call that kind of accretion. They have like this disc of material that then falls onto it. It makes them active. They then become very powerful. So we have this sub-branch of galaxies which we would classify as hosting an AGN, active galactic nuclei. because you've got an active black hole. Now if we zoom into kind of the centre of those galaxies, we've got this supermassive black hole right at the centre. So these can be billions and billions of solar masses. These are enormous, massive objects, I should say. So they're powered by these black holes in the centre. And then around the black hole, you've got this hot accretion disk. And what's happening there is that material is then falling onto the black hole. Now, if we have a black hole that doesn't have a hot accretion disk, then it's not going to be active. It just kind of sits there, fairly happy. We don't necessarily know about its presence unless it's from gravitational interaction. So our black hole at the centre of our galaxy, Sagittarius A, is not active in the manner like this one is. So that's kind of quiet. So we've got this hot accretion disk. We've then got these high energy jets. So as the material falls onto the black hole, we would then get perpendicular high energy jets being emitted. So these will be extremely powerful, and again they're kind of perpendicular to the plane of the disk. And those jets then come out of the galaxy, and then you get these enormous lobes, and they can be hundreds of thousands of light years in size, which can actually be considerably larger than the galaxy that this black hole is residing in. And what I've done here is I've zoomed in on the actual galaxy. So the actual optical image of the galaxy is very small. So if we look at the galaxy in normal visible optical light, that's what the yellow box would show you. And then if we look at it in the radio part of the spectrum, we can see these enormous jets and lobes that extend far beyond the main part of the galaxy. So these are very large structures, very powerful, and it makes these galaxies very luminous in certain parts of the electromagnetic spectrum. Another example here is this kind of edge on. The yellow arrow is kind of denoting the optical image of the galaxy, and then the blue arrows are showing the radio jets. They're kind of perpendicular to the plane of the galaxy. And this is a composite of radio and optical emission, so we can see both parts. But if we just look at it, through a normal telescope with our eyes, take a picture, we're just going to see what the yellow arrow is pointing at and not those big powerful jets or lobes. So once we then have those active galactic nuclei in the galaxy, we can then separate those into kind of two main types really. We've got these radio loud ones and we've got radio quiet. Now, examples of radio loud might be quasar, although not all quasars are going to be radio loud. Blazars, those sorts of things, they have these enormous jets and lobes, and I did a separate video how we might classify those, because it depends where the peak luminosity is in those lobes relative to the centre part basically. And then we have our radio quiet. And one example of a radio quiet is your Seyfert Galaxy. And they're the ones we're going to have a look at in this particular video, but there are other types of radio quiet, and I might actually do some videos of those as well. But Seyferts are one of the main radio quiet galaxies. So they're typically spirals. So if we go back to the Hubble classification tuning fork, your Seyferts are typically going to sit in one of those types of galaxy there, whereas maybe like a blazar or a quasar might actually be on an elliptical galaxy instead. And there's various reasons for that, which I'm not going to go into, but they're mostly spirals. So what we've got here is the electromagnetic spectrum. So the full spectrum, basically from radio all the way up to gamma ray. And these active galactic nuclei, these active black holes that are emitting, are across the full range of the spectrum. And you've got your radio loud there. So in the radio part of the spectrum, they're going to be quite luminous in radio. They're emitting a lot of radio emission, whereas your radio quiet, actually, they're emitting considerably less in the radio part of the spectrum. But it's also worth noting here that actually both types are going to share a very similar emission spectrum from the AGN. And the reason for that is they have a common central engine essentially. There's a common mechanism which is powering them all, and it's that hot accretion disk in the centre. And you've got things like a reflection of the disk itself, you've got the corona around it, you've got lots of various things in and around the black hole, which both types have, and that then gives us this full spectrum all the way up to gamma rays from kind of almost your radio. So they share that common part, but the radio loud, radio quiet, it just differs in that first part there. So fairly obvious, I would imagine. Your radio loud galaxies are going to be more luminous. They're emitting more energy than your kind of radio quiet or your Seyferts. Now you notice there, I've got another type of galaxy. There's various different types of galaxy here. And what this has got is it just kind of denoting their luminosity, their power output, kind of as a function of their distance, essentially, and how we can actually detect those. So your Seyferts have got to be closer to us because they're emitting less energy. But the key thing here is that radio loud are more luminous, radio quiet are not. Again, it should be fairly obvious why that might be the case. So why are they radio quiet, these Seyfert galaxies? Well, they're still powered by accretion disks, but their accretion rate, so the amount of material that's falling onto the black hole and the black hole mass itself, are going to be lower than a radio loud one. So actually what happens there is the radio emission and the jets that are produced are going to be relatively weak in comparison. So yes, they may still have them, but they're going to be very weak, and it reduces down the radio output of that particular galaxy. But they do still have that accretion disk, they're just not as significant. So we can then split the Seyfert galaxies into two types. Now, if you're studying galaxies and AGNs, you've probably come across this diagram, and they all assume that there's a common mechanism for all of the types, really, and it depends kind of on the viewing angle and whether it's radio loud or radio quiet. So what I've done here is we're looking at the radio quiet, low power one there, and that's our Seyferts on the lower left. The other types, like at the top, you've got like your quasars, your blazars, things like that. And then we've got other sorts, basically. So we're interested in these Seyferts here. So we have mostly type 1, type 2, but there is actually a type 1.5, which is kind of in between the two, really. So, but we're going to focus on the two main types. Now, if we look at the spectrum of both types, so what we've got here, and I've not really put it on the actual label itself, but the y-axis is like the intensity at that particular wavelength, and along the bottom is your wavelength, and that'll be in angstroms. So if it's in nanometers, it would be 400, 500, 600, so approximately in the visible part of the spectrum. The top one is type 1, the bottom one is type 2. Now type 1, if we looked at the spectrum emitted from a type 1, it's going to show broad emission lines and narrow. So you've got very specific emission lines from particular elements, molecules, those sorts of things, and it gives us this spike at that particular wavelength. Type 1 has very broad lines as well as the narrow ones. Type 2 only has the narrow emission lines. So that's how we classify that. And obviously type 1.5 is going to be, a little bit in between the two, but it's not quite as clear cut as that. So why do we get broad emission lines and narrow emission lines? Well, again, let's go back to that central mechanism, that accretion disk, the black hole, the jets, all that sort of stuff. So again, we're looking at the bottom part there. You see for type 2 and type 1. Now we have, this is the type 1 we're talking about here. We've got the broad and narrow emission lines. And the reason for that is we have a narrow line region and a broad line region, which I'm going to mention in a minute. But the reason why we see both of those is that we're looking more face on. So if the galaxies kind of face on to us, we can kind of see, imagine where those jets would be coming from. We're looking more down that line there. So we can almost see down to the central black hole. There's nothing obscuring that. So we're able to detect both regions, the broad and the narrow emission line region. And the reason for that is what you've got there, the broad lines in the spectrum are coming from dense gas clouds that are orbiting very close to the black hole. So these are going very fast, thousands of kilometers per second, and it causes a Doppler broadening. So if something's moving very fast, it's Doppler shifted. If we've got lots of clouds of gas all moving in different directions very fast at the same time, some of it is red shifted, some of it is blue shifted, and overall collectively we end up with a broad emission line, which is called Doppler broadening. And they're very close to the black hole, so we can only see those if we're looking face on. The narrow lines come from this region which is more distant from the black hole. They're lower density, they're moving much slower, and these basically produce narrow permitted lines, but also forbidden lines because it's low density. So we get these emission lines which we wouldn't get normally, and we would call those kind of forbidden lines. And again, because we can see almost down to the black hole face on, we see both regions of that. Now if we look at the type 2, what's happening here is we're looking more edge on at the galaxy, and this time round the parts around that accretion disk, so we have this kind of dusty torus, that obscures the central, not the central region, but those broad regions. We can only detect the narrow lines which are further away because we're looking more edge on this time round. So we only get the narrow lines this time. And the main difference then between type 1 and type 2 is just your viewing angle. They're thought to be the same galaxy, the same internal mechanism, the same processes that are occurring to produce the excess output. Not quite as excessive as, I don't know, like a blazar or something like that, but it's just how we look at them. One of those is going to be more face on, one is more edge on, and it means we see more or less of that central engine that's producing the output basically. So it's just viewing angle really. So thank you for watching. If you enjoy the videos and found them helpful, then do consider becoming a member of the channel. There's extra channels in the, there's extra videos in the member section, and it also helps support the channel. So thank you for watching.